We're going to talk about the Denver Nuggets. Jokic, Murray, Gordon, Johnson, Valanciunas, Brown. No more Browns, just those two. Michael Bolton, should we talk about them? Yeah, we probably should.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free, and we are available on all platforms. We are here ready to talk about the Denver Nuggets. Just a quick update on Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl. There's a points league available. There is a head-to-head category league available. There is a draft and stash format available, and a best ball format. And some people mentioned, people don't really understand what draft and stash and best ball is. So, here you go. Draft and stash. What is it? You draft a team. You don't make any trades or waiver wire. It's a roto league. Every week, there is lineups you set the lineups twice per week. That's all you do. You just set lineups twice a week. There is a grand prize for the best overall finish, and some other trickle-down prizes, which are documented in the rules document. And there is also prizes for winning your individual pod, your individual 12-man league. But draft and stash, you draft 36 rounds, and you don't make any moves. Best ball is very similar, except you do even less. It's a points format. You draft your players, and that is it. You don't set lineups. Every week, the best scoring, I think it's 10 players. It might be 12. I can't remember. The highest scoring players get automatically chosen for you against whoever your opponent is. And then at the end, the final 64 teams do a 6-week knockout competition to get down to the overall winner. You make no decisions, though. You just make your draft pick. So in that one, when you're making your draft calls, you want to have guys, hopefully, that are spiking towards the end of the season. You're good enough to get through, and then some guys that push forward towards the end of the year. Best ball is a relatively common format, I thought, but apparently some people don't know what it is. Best ball is a points league format where you make no moves during the season. Draft and stash is a roto format where the only moves you make are to set lineups during the season. That is it. And there is the regular head-to-head league available and a regular points league available at the moment. And you can check that at linktree/LOFBbowl. QR's on the screen. Link is in the description as well. I hope that explains it as well as you need. Like I said, we are here to talk about the Denver Nuggets for this upcoming year. They're a team where there's not too much concern, I guess, or queries about how the starting lineup is going to look. And I'll put my projected starting group up on the screen, but that doesn't mean there aren't questions or things that we need to pay attention to with the rotation. I'm predicting that it's going to be the headmaster, Jamal Murray, Christian Braun, Cam Johnson, Aaron Gordon, and the big chungus Nikola Jokic as the starting five. I don't know why there would be any debate about that. The rotation group, Jonas Valanciunas comes in as the backup center. I think you're going to have Bruce Brown in there. I think you're going to have Tim Hardaway in there. And then I've got 11 names there, and I do think David Adelman will mix and match a little bit, but I'm not sure who use 11 every night. The other names I've got there are the three young guys. Jalen Pickett, who honestly, Bruce Brown will play some point guard, but I'm a little concerned that Brown is washed and that he can't necessarily be a point guard to the degree they want him to be. So Jalen Pickett stepped up last season. There's Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson. So different positional spectrums for all of those guys. Pickett's a 1-2, Strawther's a 2-3, Watson's a 4-5. And then there's your Hardaway, Brown, and Valanciunas grouping of the veterans. So it is a pretty strong rotation. And again, hard to see how there could be any argument about how that stuff is going to play out. But that doesn't mean, like I said, that there aren't questions regarding this team and how we view the projections for them. Christian Braun was a huge surprise last season. I don't think there's any debate about that. I'm not going to debate that. You know that I was incorrect on Christian Braun's projection last season. I did not think he was a draftable player. I don't think anyone did, to be honest. But also, I was very skeptical of his performance in the early part of the year, and he kept it up. Apart from a blip in the middle of the year where he did lose his starting spot to Russell Westbrook, and then Westbrook got hurt, and he got it back, and he started playing 1,000,000 minutes down the stretch. And the large reason for his value was through efficiency. Part of the reason for his efficiency was he just never took any threes. he hit 1.1 threes a game. And yeah, he hit them at a pretty good percentage, but he didn't take them. So, you can look at his numbers. He was one of the true breakouts last season, Christian Braun. Someone who was able to improve all of his percentages by gigantic amounts. I'm going to have skepticism about especially the level of two-point shooting that Braun showed. But also, if he does have to take more threes, and David Adelman wants him to do that, then his overall field goal percentage, which sat at an insane 58%, it will not hold. And when that was the number one driver of what he does, because his free throws are great, didn't take very many. He didn't get assists. His steals were fine. His blocks were below average. His rebounds were pretty good. But his scoring was below average. He gave you value through efficiency. So if 58 becomes 53 through a 2-point drop, but also taking more threes, then the value is not there. So I am down on him again this season because I have skepticism about outlier percentages sticking, plus if there's a change in the profile. Will there be more rest for Big Chungus Nikola Jokic? I'm going to talk a lot about Jokic, and I want you to have this idea in your head when we're thinking about this Nuggets team for this season. If you are playing a head-to-head format with Yahoo's default schedule, in grand final week, in the final championship matchup, the Nuggets play 2 games. That should influence your decision, and I will say it right now. If you are playing that schedule, which, by the way, you should not. That is a bad fantasy schedule. But if you are playing that, do not take Nikola Jokic number 1. Very straightforward. Do not take Nikola Jokic number 1. I'll say that now. It's not about debate. I will tell you, don't do it. And I know the rebuttal, but you're so stupid. Jokic is number 1. That's all cool, right? Well done. Fantastic. Jokic was actually, you know what? According to DaRon, he was number 2 last season, but whatever. All well and good. Points leagues, he does have a bit more of a gap. So I guess if you wanted to do it, but also remember, let's say he averages 60. He averaged 64 fantasy points last season. Let's say he averages 64 again, which I'll talk about that in a second. I don't think he will. So that means in that championship week, he'll get 128 fantasy points. Again, averages don't work that way, but whatever. Let's say 120 points. If you took Giannis at number 2, and you looked at what he could do, in order for Giannis to provide that same value in that week, the Bucks have 3 games that week, but Giannis would just need to have 40 points to get 120. The Thunder have 3 games that week, so Shea would need to get 40 points a game. The Lakers play 4 games that week, so Luka would need to average 30 points. And I know you say, well, you got to get there first. You do, but do you actually think that if you have Luka or Shea or Giannis or Wemby, who's got 4 games that week, that you don't have a chance of making it? Do you think the difference is that big? I don't think it is. Because you put yourself, because if Giannis averages 60 points, you get 180 points that week. If Wemby averages 55, you get 220 points that week versus Jokic's 120. And I'm just using fantasy points as an example because you can throw it to categories as well. It's the same thing. And yeah, Giannis might get hurt. Wemby might not be there for 4 games. But you know what? Jokic also missed time in fantasy playoffs last season. What if he plays 1 game that week? Again, there is a gap between these guys. And this brings me even to Jokic. I don't think he's playing 37 minutes a night. I wouldn't bank on him shooting 42% from 3 or averaging 1.8 steals or averaging a triple-double. You might bank on that. I won't. I'm not saying that he's going to be bad. I don't expect it. I think he's going to be awesome. I think he's still going to be the number 1 player per game. I think he still will be. But I also think that a lot of these numbers are going to come down. Will he average 30 points, 13 rebounds, 10 assists? I don't think so. Because I don't think he'll play 37 minutes. Because I think they will want to prioritize giving Nikola Jokic more rest. Because he just played too much. That is why they brought in Jonas Valanciunas. That is why they fought to make sure Valanciunas didn't go to Europe. Because they wanted reliability behind it. Because this team is making a huge push to win a title. And I don't think that means that Jokic is sitting there playing 37 a night. So, will there be more rest for Jokic? Yes. If you're in a roto league, do you want to take Jokic 1? Absolutely go for it. If your schedule is different to that Yahoo default 1 in head-to-head playoffs, yeah, take him at 1. I think that's great, a correct decision. But I can't justify it if you play Yahoo default. I can't. Aaron Gordon last season was able to shoot the ball well, somehow. Not really sure how he was able to improve his shooting that much, but it was right across the board. It was his threes. It was his free throws. He lost all of his defensive ability somehow, but he did bring in like 44% from three. Again, if I'm going to tell you that Jokic won't shoot 42, I don't think Gordon shoots 44, but now instead of thinking he's a 34-point guy, 34% guy, is he a 38 guy? Maybe. He also was 81 from the line. Now, he had a lot of injuries last season, but he only played 28 minutes, Aaron Gordon. So I think there's actually room for him to be better than what he was last season, and he was pretty good. And that shooting, I do think, is somewhat real. There's going to be questions about how they use Bruce Brown and how they use Tim Hardaway. Because, like I said, there was 11 guys, I think, that could be considered rotation players. Like, does Hardaway play every night? Does Brown play point guard and Pickett doesn't play at all? Or does Pickett play point guard and Brown plays off ball? Who's the replacement if Jamal Murray goes down? Is it Brown or is it Pickett? Because we don't know. Like, Brown has been in the wilderness for the last 2 years. Indiana, Toronto, and New Orleans. I'm not saying that Toronto and Indiana are the wilderness. I mean that he's been in the wilderness because he's been hurt and he hasn't been playing any sort of large or important role. So I don't really know where Brown is at this point in his career. And the other one is Cam Johnson and Michael Porter were just a straight one-for-one swap. We saw that outside of draft picks, obviously, in the financial components, but in terms of the position on the roster. But does Johnson actually just take the same usage that Porter did? Because I'm not sure he did. I'm not sure he does. His usage in Brooklyn was about the same as what Porter had in Denver. And those offensive environments are very different. So I wouldn't, and you could say that Johnson will increase efficiency play with Jokic. Easy call to make, right? That's okay. But does he see his efficiency drop down? Does he ball handle less? Probably. I would say probably yes. So I wouldn't expect it's just a very clear one-for-one in terms of looking at projections and numbers that way. We'll come back and talk about under and overvalued players for the Nuggets in a sec. Today's episode, though, it is brought to you by FanDuel. With the NFL season here, FanDuel is making sure you're ready for each game's kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You can use it on any bets. You can use it on spreads and totals and straight ups and same-game parlays and non-same-game parlays and futures and NFL futures and NBA futures and season win totals and baseball playoffs and World Series. Whatever it is you want to do, FanDuel has all that available. The app is easy to use. It is fun to use. So many promotions they chuck on there as well. So when you are ready to play, go and download the FanDuel app now by going to FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay, we're here, we're ready to go in talking about this Denver Nuggets team. Like I mentioned already, we are going to talk about over and undervalued players on this squad, because I do think that there are some that we need to talk about. We're looking at the draft values here, and in terms of undervalued guys, there's two guys that do really stand out to me. One of them is the headmaster, Jamal Murray. Murray, at the moment, he's, I think, one of the better early round players. He's currently sitting outside the top 40 on Yahoo. I think he's a top 30 player. So to me, that's just an obvious one. Fantrax has got his ADP at 39 as well. I think, again, you've got at least a round of value in that. ESPN is probably a little bit more well-positioned, 33 on ESPN, which is fine. But to me, he's a mid-third round guy. And even last year, he was injured early in the season, but he played through a lot. He played a lot of minutes. And also this season, he does not have Russell Westbrook to take usage and assist opportunities away from him. So I think that, and I don't really know, I guess are people still having the hangover effect from how badly he looked in the Olympics, or how poorly he played in the Olympics maybe, and then the slow start to the season, because he was great down the stretch. So Murray is very clearly, to me, undervalued. And I think Aaron Gordon is also being a little bit undervalued. On Fantrax, his ADP, for God knows what reason, is 174. Gordon, to me, even though we might think his upside is pretty low, and I do get that, I think that's fair to say, having Aaron Gordon as a 16-team league guy, when I think he's closer to the 100 mark, honestly, it's way off. Now, he's sitting at 105 ADP on Yahoo, which is pretty much bang on. I think his points league numbers and his rankings across ESPN points at 103, pretty fine. The injuries are a slight concern for Gordon with his multiple calf and hamstring issues last season. But overall, there is a lot of value here in what Aaron Gordon can bring for this upcoming season. And I just don't think that it's being... I Like, he's just someone who, I think he's very Andrew Wiggins-like at the moment, where Wiggins just doesn't get any attention at all. And I don't think that Wiggins or Gordon, to be honest, are going to break out into huge seasons, but they're guys that you can get around that 100 to 120 zone who seem relatively secure and relatively solid in what they do. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes in that area of a draft, that's very good. That's what you want. That's really useful for you. If we look at some overvalued guys, there are two players here that I do want to touch on. One of them is Cam Johnson. Now, we'll get a really good indication of that this season, but there seems to be a general consensus that Cameron Johnson is just a better player than Michael Porter Jr. I don't agree with that. I don't agree that it's clear. Now, I'm not going to say that it's definitively that Porter is better than Johnson, but I'm also not going to sit here and tell you that it's very clear that Johnson is better. Also, there is a narrative that Michael Porter's injury prone, but he's played more games than Cam Johnson. So, yeah, I know. They both have a lot of significant injuries. So the idea that, oh, look at that, you got more safety in Johnson, you absolutely do not. Johnson last season averaged 31 fantasy points, playing on the Nets with 22.5 usage. Like, Michael Porter had 20 usage in Denver. I'd be very surprised if Johnson maintained 22 usage. I'd be surprised if Cam Johnson maintained Michael Porter's usage from last season, which means he's going to drop a lot. Which to me means if he was 87 last season on these numbers, and yeah, his efficiency might rise, but like, how high? He shot 39 from 3. He shot 48 from the field. What's he going to be, a 51 guy shooting 42? It's possible. That's possible, but in points leagues, that doesn't really matter that much. Like, Cam Johnson is ranked at 80 or 76 on Yahoo. Bro, no way. In a points league, no way I would do that. In a category league, it's probably a little bit high as well. But for points leagues, like, you're absolutely dreaming if you're thinking that Cam Johnson at 76 is worth it. He's just, like, that means he's going to be way better than last season. Not way better, but better enough. And I just don't think that's happening. So, yeah, no way. Not interested in that at all. The other guy that I think is an overvalued guy for this upcoming season is Christian Braun. And I already detailed some of that stuff with Brown earlier on, but he's sitting with an Fantrax ADP at 87. His ESPN ADP is 88. Okay, his ESPN category league rank is 68. No, sorry, his points league rank is 68, which is, like, baffling. That makes no sense. Christian Braun at 68 is a great league-losing move. Brown, I have ranked it around 120th for category leagues and around 150. It depends on your format, but 120 Yahoo points, 110 ESPN points, right? So around that mark. But like, he's going inside the top 100 on Yahoo, inside the top 90 on ESPN, and I said ranked inside the top 70 for points leagues. That just is a way to lose, I think. You are relying upon Brown and his percentages, because the other stuff is just mid-as. No big assists, rebounds average, steals average, blocks average, scoring well below average, threes well below average. You're relying on field goals and free throws. And if he takes more threes, the field goals come down. And the free throws might stick, but also they were terrible the year before. So, is he good at it? I don't know. I'm not that worried about his minutes, but also they brought in two players who play the literal exact same position. And I know you can say Bruce Brown is a point guard, but again, I don't know that he is. But Bruce Brown and Tim Hardaway both will play and can play that position. So there's also no guarantee that he plays 34 a night. I think that he will, but there's no guarantee that he does. And if you're taking him at 68, for example, Christian Braun, well, you'd hope that is a guarantee. You'd hope the 58% shooting is a guarantee. And all this is possible. He could do it, right? Like the last 20 games, he shot 60%. It seems really unlikely to me that would be something that carries over. But I'm not ready to bank on it. Therefore, to me, at some of those draft points, it's very risky. And I am not going to do that at those sort of spots, especially in points leagues where he just doesn't generate fantasy points at the numbers that would necessitate taking him in that area. He's just not that guy. We're going to come back and talk about some stars and some breakouts and all of that sort of stuff before we do that, though. Today's episode is brought to you by Skims. Skims makes underwear for men now. You've seen it. Women's Skims everywhere, probably polluting your social media pages. You might have tried on a pair of female Skims. Whatever. It's comfy. But now, they've made it for men. So you don't have to do that. You can actually show it off and be proud. Well, you can show it off anyway and be proud. Skims is comfortable. fit on underwear is so important. You don't want to be scratching around, go, bloody hell, what's going on? It's riding up and I don't feel comfortable and you're itching and you go, why are you always touching? I'm just making sure it's adjusted. And Skims eliminates that problem. Does it remove social awkwardness? Well, maybe in that part of it. But Skims is the comfortable underwear that you want to get. So many colors, cuts, fabrics, materials, they're the same thing, but I want to say two different words. Skims is the one you need to go to. So go to Skims Men's and shop Skims Men's at skims.com. Let them know that we sent you, because after you place your order, there's podcast in the survey, and then you can select this show in the drop-down menu that follows. All right, shout out to Balls. Let's talk a little bit more about the Denver Nuggets for the upcoming season. Talk about some star upside guys, some breakout players, injury updates, all of that stuff. There are two guys to me that are top 50 players here. It's Jokic, very obviously, and the other one is the headmaster. I don't really need to talk too much about them. I've spoken about them in detail. I don't think anybody else on this team has a shot outside of wild injuries happening, elevating somebody. I don't think anybody else has a sniff of getting to the top 50. But Jokic and Murray are those two guys, again, not controversial. Who arrived onto this team? Who's new? Well, Cam Johnson, we've talked about him at length. Bruce Brown comes in. Like I said, I'm not 100% certain that Brown will just be the automatic backup point guard. It could be Pickett. It could be Brown early on. They go, Brucey's lost shooting touch. Brucey's not as good defensively. Brucey's ability to drive is not where it was given the multiple knee injuries. All that is distinctly possible. And Pickett might just outplay him. I think Brown gets first crack at it, but it is possible. So Brown will be one of those guys that we keep an eye on, because we always need to know who's next up. Who can we stream in when there's a 3-game in 4-night spot? And it might be him. Valanciunas is the backup center. They were relying upon Zeke Naji, who's still on the roster somehow, and DeAndre Jordan last season. Valanciunas is not going to be draftable. And I thought there'd be some situations where you would see his ADP and his rank pushed into an area that made him look like he could be drafted. Now, to be honest, his ADP sits at 136 on Yahoo. Bruce Brown's at 135, but that's honestly gets skewed by stuff like Tim Hardaway's at 130. So I don't think we worry about that too much. But I think very obviously, if Jokic misses games, last season DeAndre Jordan was an elite streamer. If Jokic misses, we add Valanciunas. That is a simple thing. And harkening back to the start of the show, draft and stash. Best ball. We talk about handcuffs not being a thing in daily changes leagues for fantasy. In those formats, it's huge. Valanciunas, an elite option. So if you wanted to take him in like round 12 or one of those drafts, do it. Absolutely do it. Because he's not great, but when he starts, he might give you top 60 numbers. And that's the elite handcuff sort of stuff. Tim Hardaway joins as well. Like, he started nearly all of last season. Terrible for fantasy. And he shot a lot of threes. They didn't go in though. But yeah, I don't... He to me is also a chance to just not be an every night rotation player if Strawther really steps up. They also brought in Kessler Edwards. So they were really mining the Dallas Mavericks injury-riddled two-way guys, because not only did they bring in Kessler Edwards, they brought in Moses Brown as well. The C-part. Remember him? The guy that every year people go, no, just give him a chance. Then he has a couple of big games and he's terrible. Remember him? Yep. Well, he's on Denver now too. Now, Edwards and Brown are competing for the final roster spot. They might also just not use either of them, so don't get your hopes up. Curtis Jones and Tamar Bates also new. They're on two-way contracts for the Nuggets, but given how deep this team actually is, I would expect you don't see anything from them at all. Nothing at all. Let's talk about breakouts, and it is hard to find a real breakout on this team. I could have said Jalen Pickett, but I'm going to throw in Julian Strawther, because Strawther had a few moments last season. He was pretty inconsistent, but he did show a huge improvement. There is more to come, I think. The worry with him is that outside of scoring, I think he might do nothing. And he's got a great role model in Tim Hardaway Jr. to look to, but he can't really pass. He can't dribble. He doesn't defend at all. But he could just be so much better than Hardaway that he finds that role, and maybe he is actually the sixth man, ahead of Pickett, ahead of Bruce Brown, ahead of Hardaway, and plays 27 a night. I don't think so, but that's not something to rule out. Like last season, I thought there was a real chance, and he was great in preseason. I thought he could have started ahead of Christian Brown, and obviously completely wrong. But I do think that there's another opportunity here for Strawther to step up, and we just keep an eye. Now, there's no very clear, huge role coming, but put yourself into the sixth man spot, and then an injury happens, and when you can play the 2 and the 3, which he can, then you get a little bit more interested in that upside through those type of scenarios. 2 injuries to talk about. DaRon Holmes was a late first-round pick last season, tore his Achilles in Summer League, didn't play at all. He's back. He played in Summer League. He's not going to have a sizable role, obviously, because Valanciunas is the backup. I would expect that Holmes is the third-string center. He can play a little bit of power forward, but Peyton Watson's going to have that role as the backup power forward there as well. We just want to see Holmes get healthy, and we want to see some little flashes, because obviously, Valanciunas is not long for the NBA. Like, obviously. So they would hope that Valanciunas is there this season, Holmes gets his feet under him, and then next season he can take on the backup role. And I think Holmes is going to be a starting caliber player in the NBA at some point. The other one is Aaron Gordon, who had like calf issues like 3 times last season, and then of course in the playoffs tore his hamstring. Played through it and looked terrible in that final Game 7, but a lot of soft tissue injuries, which at his age, he's not super young, he's like 31, I think, is a concern. But from all reports, he's fine, he's ready to go. But that repeated soft tissue problem last season it's not one to completely ignore. Now we go to the schedule, because they've got one of the worst schedules you can have. And I've said this multiple times as well. It doesn't really matter that they've got 16 back-to-backs, because 3 extra back-to-backs over a 25-week period does not really matter that much. But when you are the team with the most back-to-backs, with some guys with injury concerns, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, Cam Johnson, and maybe more rest for Jokic, it does have a factor. And then you combine it with a 2-game playoff week, which starts on the week of March the 30th, which is Yahoo Default Championship Week. Now, I think that making those decisions on 2-game playoff weeks is only really important in your first 2 rounds. You could maybe stretch it to round 3 and say, well, I don't want to take Jamal Murray there because of that reason. Okay. All right, I get that, right? That's okay. It is vitally important to me in those first 5 picks, your top 10 picks, whatever. That's why I would push Luka Doncic down the last couple of seasons. And it's why, if I'm playing Yahoo Default, which I am not, I would not draft Jokic at 1. I don't care about Aaron Gordon or Cameron Johnson or deeper leagues Valanciunas about the 2-game week. I don't care. That doesn't matter. It's the top end guys when you can find somebody equivalent. Like, for example, if Jokic was the consensus number 5 player, just take this as a consensus question and don't get upset about it. This is not like a how would you feel if you didn't eat breakfast type question. Just think about this for a second. If Jokic was the number 5 consensus player, and it was Wemby, Shea, Doncic, Giannis ahead of him, and Jokic was always slotted in at number 5, right? And then, like, we sit in this scenario now where we go, man, after the top 5, what do you do at 6? It's a real drop-off, right? That's our general thought now. But if instead of Giannis being the consensus 5th guy, it was Jokic. And then we come into that scenario where Jokic has got a 2-game playoff week, I would say, take him at 5 anyway. Because the drop-off is so sizable that I think that that's fine to do. But when you're talking where you can take, instead of Jokic at 1, you can take Wemby, you could take Shea, you could take Luka. In a points league, you could even take Giannis, and the drop-off, while it can be there, and again, we don't know that Jokic maintains the same level. We don't know that. Because the drop-off is not as large, I think that 2-game week is a decisive factor. And I know you will disagree, some of you. In fact, I would say majority of you will disagree. And that's okay. But we did this last season with these 2-game guys. We showed the numbers. It's very hard to even be a top 50 player when you're playing 2 games. And this is the best of the best. Nikola Jokic is the best of the best fantasy player we have seen in years. He's the best of the best. But if you're playing 2 games, you really can't even be a top 50 guy. And when your team is built on that, that's really difficult. So I'll leave it at that. That's the Denver Nuggets. That's a preview for them. I hope that there was enough information there. We didn't get to talking a huge amount about Zeke Naji, which I'm sure you're disappointed about, or even Hunter Tyson, who honestly they probably should end up cutting him. I don't think he's ever going to do anything. Peyton Watson also didn't have a big discussion about, but he's a blocks type streamer when guys are hurt. So look, again, Jokic, take him at 1 in any draft. Unless Yahoo Default, I would not do that. In fact, I could make an argument, and I guess you're saying don't take him at 1, so where would you take him, Josh? It's a good question. If I'm in a Yahoo points league, it's tough because he averages like 60 a game. And there's other guys who are like 55 apart from Giannis at 60. I might take him at 3. In a category league, I could see an argument for 4. Honestly, if you are playing that. Because Again, if I'm going to tell you that Wemby could be better, Shea could be better, Giannis could be better, Luka could be better, and you got a 2-game week there, why couldn't you go to 4 or 5? I don't know I don't know exactly how far I would let him slip, but that is an important factor. Murray to me is a 3rd-round guy, mid-3rd round player in categories and in points, probably points towards the back of the 3rd. Johnson, I would be in points very skeptical. To me, he's like a 90s to 100s category guy. And Brown is, again, one of those guys probably in that 110 to 130 range that I'm okay with there, but I'm not going into the 80s, not going into the 70s. Gordon also around the 100s is about right. And then everyone else, Valanciunas I like in the best ball draft and stash type scenarios. I think Peyton Watson's got a little bit of value there, and Strawther's a name we just keep an eye on. You can also keep an eye on the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl, which we detailed at the start of the show about draft and stashes and best balls and what's available there. It's linktree/LOFB Bowl. So go and check that out. Category, you can join all of them. Category League, Points League, Draft and Stash, Roto. Auction should be coming next week. There'll be an auction coming next week, so be aware and be ready for that. All right, hit the subscribe button, hype it up if you're on YouTube mobile app. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.